Today is called Gotan-e in Japanese, and it is the observance that celebrates and honors the birth of Shinran Shonin. He lived from 1173 to 1263, and he's the founder of our particular tradition of Buddhism called Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinsho. So today I'd like to talk about Shinran Shonin's great contribution to the world of religious thought. And so I'd like to show this by focusing on one aspect of his life when he did some most severe, harsh religious practices that you can imagine. You can't even imagine, from age 9 to age 29. And he practiced, at that time, the main school of Buddhism was called Tendai Buddhism. And it was located in Kyoto on this mountain. This is Mount Hiei. You can see the Mount Hiei and the city of Kyoto is below. How many of you have ever been to Kyoto? Anybody? Okay. So now that you could take a tram to go up to the top of Mount Hiei, and it's sort of a scenic tourist site, but Tendai Buddhism still continues to this day there. This is one of there's literally hundreds of temples on this mountain. This is one called the Endyakuji temple. So Shinran Shonin did this practice called Kai Hogyo. Kai Hogyo. It's been translated as mountain marathon on Mount Hiei. So the monk, and you can see this is a picture of one of the Tendai monks doing Kai Hogyo practice. It takes 7 years to complete. And Shinran Shonin is thought to have done this practice from the age of somewhere during his years on Mount Hiei between 9 and 29, probably in his 20s. This is a young Tendai monk with the Kai Hogyo attire. So that straw thing is actually a hat. It's a strange looking hat. It's not for shade. It's like this tubular shape, and it protects the monk from the branches and things. And they're walking through the trails, and this hat is designed to do that. But he's not allowed to wear it for the first 3 years. Also, notice he's got just sandals and bare feet. He's not even allowed to wear what's called tabi until after the 3rd year. So here's a picture of the monk actually doing this. So they have to go to various religious sites around the mountain and do short chanting in front of the various religious sites. These are straw sandals that the monk wears during this Kai Hogyo practice. It's made by a certain layperson. It's not hiking boots or anything like that. These straw sandals. This is the schedule for the 7-year practice. So you can see it's 1,000 days. The first year you do 100 days, second year you do 100 days, third year you do 100 days, fourth year you do 2 sets of 100 days, fifth year you do 2 sets of 100 days, sixth year you do 100 days, seventh year you do 2 sets of 100 days. And then it shows the distance. So it's either 30 or 40 kilometers each day. The one in parentheses is there's 2 courses. There's a short course and a long course. Okay, it's like, is Roy here? You know, like the Torrey Pines has 2 courses, right? The north course and the south course, and one is longer than the other. So it says here this Imuro Valley course is longer. So the longer one is in parentheses. But each day they're going either 30 or 40 kilometers a day, chanting, walking through the mountain. And then they have one Kiri Mawari, which is a long one, 54 kilometers, which is like, it's like 30 miles or so, something like that. Let's see, how does that convert? I think it's about 30 miles or so. So you can see how difficult this is. Let me go back to this picture. So the other thing is, these monks, now not just anyone gets to do this. You have to show that you're pretty tough, and then you have to be given permission to do this practice. And once you start, you've completed, or you carry with you, the monk carries with them a rope, a piece of rope, and a knife. And if for some reason they cannot complete this practice, they have to take their own life. I mean, think of how, that sounds pretty severe to us, right? But think about it. Have we ever done anything in our life with that kind of commitment? That with our whole being, at the risk of our life, we don't go into our jobs that way. We don't go into our marriages that way. This marriage is gonna succeed whether it kills me, even if it kills me. But put it in that kind of perspective, to do something with that kind of totality of commitment, and that's what they have to do. So there is within this 7-year practice. Look on the middle there, on the right-hand side, is 700th day do-iri. So this is now a super intensive thing that the monk has to do once during this 1,000-day period. It's called do-iri. And what happens is for 9 days, they're not allowed to eat, to drink, to sleep, or to rest. I mean, of course, the average person, it would kill them. And initially, when they started this do-iri practice, it was 10 days long, and almost every monk died. So they said, well, we better shorten it a little bit. So then they made it 9 days. And the monk sits in this little temple, and he's chanting sutras and throwing these sticks into this fire. And this ritual is like a fire ceremony that consumes evil passions and purifies the consciousness. See? So 9 days, no food, no water, and no sleep. And on top of that, even though you're not allowed to drink anything, once a day, the monk has to take this bucket and go down to this little well and get water as a water offering to the Buddha. But he's not allowed to drink any of the water. But these monks, I met 2 monks that had completed this Kaihogyo practice while I was in Japan. And, they spoke at a minister's seminar thing. And the monk said, just to go out once a day in this evening cool air, the moisture was just rejuvenating. Then when they touched the water, just to touch the water, the moisture just goes into their being. And of course you can imagine, well, don't you get a dry cotton mouth, how can you chant? And so they allow them to rinse their mouth, but they measure the amount of water that they give them to rinse their mouth, and then they have to spit out the same amount of water. It's just like unbelievable. And then going back to this picture, see there's monks on the side. So they're there to make sure he doesn't fall asleep or take a rest. So you're under constant vigil for these 9 days. Now, this is a picture of a monk who has completed this 9-day do-iri practice. And first he's doing gasho, he's thanking the Buddha, thank you for allowing me to do this austere 9-day practice of no food, no water, and no sleep. And then he's given a special medicinal drink. So after this 9 days of no food and no water, he only takes small amounts of food initially. And then even sleep, you think, oh, you must sleep for days. No, they think they can only sleep for short amounts of time initially. And then gradually they get back to where they can sleep more normally. So this is a monk, not on the do-iri, but he's just doing the regular practice. So once during the day of their regular circuit time, they get to stop and have a cup of tea. And this cup of tea is placed there by their mentoring minister, their mentoring teacher. Imagine what that must feel like. You've been walking for several hours during the night, you're tired, you're thirsty, and you stop and you drink this cup of tea left there by your teacher. So Shinran Shonin is thought to have done this practice during those 20 years that he spent on Mount Hiei. Let me go back to this, the longest version, the Kiri Mawari, was 50 something. Well, anyway, the longest, when they're doing that long one, they start at midnight. They get up at they start at midnight. They go all night long. They go from the Mount Hiei down into the city of Kyoto and back up to Mount Hiei. They get back about 9 o'clock at night. And they just sleep a few hours, and then they have to start all over again at midnight. So that's what that Kiri Mawari is. It's like doing 2 marathons every day, for 100 days. So Shinran Shonin is thought to have done this Kaihogyo practice, but for Shinran Shonin, this practice, it didn't lead to any kind of enlightenment or awakening. So in general Buddhism, like in Tendai Buddhism, these practices, they are meant to sort of crush, break, smash the ego self, and so that enlightenment can emerge. But Shinran Shonin's experience was that these practices were more ego-enhancing than ego-defeating. Oh, I did Kaihogyo practice, And I think in many ways these practices develop, it's almost like sort of macho Buddhism. I did 500 days of Kaihogyo. Well, I'm going to do 600 days of Kaihogyo. And that's how these kind of austere practices kind of developed. Started in China, and it was brought to Japan from China. So Shinran Shonin, he hit a wall in terms of practice, of doing practice to try to attain enlightenment. And he heard of this popular teacher, Honen, who was teaching a very simple practice of the Nimbutsu, just saying Namo Amida Butsu. So Shinran Shonin, he hears of this teacher Honen, and in meeting him, he meets his true teacher, or Zenjishi. So Honen Shonin taught his followers that just live your life in a manner that allows you to live a life of the Nimbutsu. If being married and raising a family allows you to live the Nimbutsu, then that was fine with Honen. You don't have to be a monk. So now for the first time, Shinran Shonin is meeting a teacher that he respects and reveres, and this teacher says, yeah, if you want to get married, go ahead and get married. I mean, he must have been doing cartwheels and jumping up. And it's okay to get married. He's been a monastic monk for 29 years, celibate monk. But even though he has these vows of celibacy and following the precepts, beautiful woman walks by, and he melts. So the desire, wasn't removed by practice. See? And so Honen says, no, it's okay to get married and have a family. This changed Buddhism totally. From Shinran Shonin and Honen, changed all of Buddhism in Japan. Now, Zen and other traditions, they get married and they have families, even though they might have a period of harsh training, like maybe a 2-year period or something like that. But they don't maintain a celibate life the whole time. So Shinran Shonin, in following Honen, he began to sense being embraced by truth rather than trying to grasp after it or attain it. He began to sense the light of the Dharma, the truth of the Nimbutsu, entering his heart and mind, penetrating the darkness of his ignorance and delusion. So it was the power of the Dharma not his ego power or his self-created power that was able to defeat his ego self. So if you try to grab a snowflake, you can't grab it, right? But if you open your hand, it gently falls in your hand. I know it doesn't snow in Las Vegas, but I thought this image really kind of describes the sort of religious perspective that Shinran Shonin brought. You just open your heart and mind, and now we receive the light of the Buddha. We receive the Dharma. It's not something that we can grasp after. So this, to me, is Shinran Shonin's great contribution to religious thought. That truth is to be received, not attained. That religious practice can be ego-enhancing rather than ego-defeating. And his influence changed all of Buddhism. So, we didn't chant the Nembutsu Wasan, but this is one of Shinran's poems. The light of wisdom exceeds all measure, and every finite living being receives this illumination that is like the dawn. So take refuge in Amida, the true and real light. So Shinran Shonin comes to sense the light of the Buddha, the light of wisdom, everywhere, illuminating all beings, and it reaches everyone. So take refuge in Amida, or take refuge in true and real light. So that's my message today for Gotane. Wanted to share that aspect of Shinran Shonin's life. Namandams. Thank you for listening.